Hi, I'm Jochen Schleese, founder of Saddlefit for Life. Today I'm going to talk about fitting the saddle to the moving horse. Why is it so important and what to look for it? Now, as a rider, you know, you sit on the saddle, you ride along every day, something else comes up and you question all this. Is it the saddle? Something going on with his hoof? What's going on with him today? And then eventually you get the saddle fitted. And I came across some fitters what doesn't make sense what I felt. And I felt it while I was riding my horse. The horse was moving. And most saddle fitters look at the horse in the aisle, measure the horse in the aisle while it's nice and square, and says, this is why it doesn't fit. And it's hard for me as a rider to follow that. So I always had a problem with this. So this is why I really wanted to make this webinar here to understand how important it is that the saddle has to fit while the horse is moving, not just standing in the aisle. Don't get me wrong, the saddle has to be checked on the standing horse as well. You know, you have to measure the horse while it's standing square and you taking first steps in the barn where it's nice and level, or on the ground where it's nice and level. What is really important is when we fit the saddle to a moving horse, what are the things, what I'm really looking for when the horse is moving in front of me? You know, I look how his tail is carried, I look how he's stepping over, and so on and so forth. So there is so many controversy in this industry, and I wanted to make sure it doesn't happen to you as a rider or as a fitter or as a agronomist, as an equine or saddle agronomist. So I made sure I wrote all these important parts down so I don't forget anything. So here's the list. So what happens if the horse is back under the saddle when it moves versus when it's standing still? So we can say, oh, when the horse walks, the back goes this way. That's what I feel when the horse walks. Trots just a little faster. Okay, so how does the canter feel? The canter feels like a worm squirming forward. I can feel that movement of the back. I can feel that. But what really happens was so fascinating the first time I saw it, is by a good friend of mine now. I got to know him because my parents installed in me, same with my teachers, always surround yourself with smarter people. So I always looked at people, hey, what do these vets do? What does this saddle maker do? What do these physiotherapists do? Or chiropractor and so on and so forth. And one of them was a rider as well. And he says, there got to be a way to measure horses in movement. And he did it. He had a horse on the treadmill on top, like a big tripod, filmed from the top with a 3D camera, and kind of scanned the back while the horse was walk, trot, canter on the treadmill. Well, was that an eye-opener? There was 9 different backs where the horse was moving. Here comes the biggest shocker. There's not even a saddle on, or the rider. So we really need to understand, where's the shoulder blade? Right? That's one of my questions. What happens to the shoulder? When the leg goes forward, right, the upper arm goes straighter and the scapula rotates backwards. Kind of like my shoulder here. So here I got a little see-through horse so you can see what I was talking about. Lower leg, upper leg, shoulder blade. And I happen to have this real bone from a little pony, what I got from a veterinarian. So here you see the elbow, here's the upper arm, and here's the shoulder joint. So what we always thought that the shoulder moves like your knee, back and forth, and your lower leg, right, back and forth. But the shoulder does not just go upwards, backwards when the horses move. So the leg goes forward, that pushes the upper arm upwards, and then this goes backwards. But if you look closer, you see here how, let me show you the other side, it's a little bit easier to see, how the upper arm part, right, how this is round, and this here is kind of more like your hip joint. And like your hip joint, you can move your leg forward and back, but also to the side. So the scapular, actually, when the horse moves, okay, we need to understand, doesn't go upwards, backward, but also does this. Okay, it also does that. So there is a rotation, what happens during this movement. So kind of important when you want to fit a saddle, you measure the horses standing there, doesn't move, right? How far does the shoulder goes back? I mean, there's other studies done where they said, oh, I documented that the horses move 8 centimeters in total, 4 forward, 4 back. So that would mean I only need to go 4 centimeter back behind the shoulder blade, and it would never interfere. Do this test, lift the horse's leg up, move it forward, and then feel how far the shoulder goes. It goes sometimes up to 10 centimeters, not just 4. That's 4 inches. All right. So the movement of the shoulder, the movement of the horse, I as a rider trying to create a bigger movement. Speaking of the rider, when I fit the saddle to a moving horse, make sure you look how the rider is sitting on the horse. So if the saddle fits the horse in movement, that's great. But what do you need to fit? Or how should you need to fit the saddle to a moving horse if the rider sits always on this side? Is it the rider or is it the horse? What comes first, the chicken or the egg, is of course a common question we ask ourselves. But the most important message I want to bring to you is when I fit the saddle to the moving horse, I'm not just looking at the horse. I also look, what does the rider do on the saddle and how does it impact the horse's back? Very important. Let me see what else I wrote here. When I write certain movements, for example, shoulder in, haunches in, I try to do side movements, or I want to jump over the fence, all that changes the three-dimensional shape of the horse's back. I also need to understand that a jumping saddle would be fitted completely different than a dressage. A dressage horse, one leg goes forward, one goes back. So they kind of do this. But on the jumping horse, when the horse supports the jump, both shoulders go back. So if the shoulder goes back, that might impact how much room he needs in that. So it is very, very important to really understand how we need to look at the saddle on the horse, how we make it fit when it stands there, and then when we watch him go, what are we looking for? Okay, so this is what I want to cover in this seminar. So let's talk about fitting the saddle to a moving horse, how to go about it. First of all, put yourself into the horse's frame of mind. The horse loves to be free, running around with his friends, no humans, and just be left alone. And for sure not have something strapped on his back and then have a girdle, like we call it a girth, strapped around as well. So as soon as we put weight on the horse's back, a human, and a saddle, we restrict the horse's movement. So one of the things we really want to see is when the horse moves free, we want to give him the same ability. We want him to have the most freedom he can. So if I would be a horse, have to have sports equipment, as a human, what kind of sports equipment would I have? Let's say soccer. I would have good soccer shoes. Let's say ice hockey player, you need good skates. Football player or any kind of a sports, what goes around your foot, because your foot really has a lot of moving parts. So in order for you to have support in your ankle and yet have advantage in the sports you're trying to do, that shoe has to fit. Now when you go and buy a pair of shoes, you go to a store or you buy it online, the shoe comes, do you put it in the cupboard and leave it alone? Or when the shoe comes, do you actually put it on and try it first before you munch the box and throw it away? What if that shoe you bought doesn't feel good when you walk? You would do that in the store. Before you pay for that shoe, when you in the physical store, you put it on, you walk back and forth. You know, you might stand in front of the mirror, how sexy does my ankle look like? I don't know. You do all kinds of things. But what about if you're a professional? What about if you're an athlete and you're a runner? Would you a little bit run up and down the aisle Who cares what other people think? I said, oh, there's another person who's trying on some shoes. I've been there. I actually saw, and I guess he was a basketball player because he was hopping up and down. I says, well, that looks funny, but he didn't care. He really tried his shoes. And this is what I'm trying to communicate to you. When you fit the saddle to a dynamic horse, think about that. The horse needs to feel it. How do you know? Because you're not really in the horse's mind, right? But you can look at certain things of if the saddle causes the horse's pain while the horse moves. I mean, there's numerous ways. One of the top veterinarian professors here in North America has done it with thermography. The horse's eye has a certain temperature. If the temperature in the eye changes, the horse has pain. This is known for a long time. Other experts in Europe have come up with the pain scale. So we know when the horse, let's say you walk along, you asked him to trot, boom, the ears fly back. Or you asked him to rising trot, the horses flies up. The neck flies up. So when you try the saddle with the horse, don't just think about you, as a rider. Of course you should think about you. But what you also do subconsciously says, oh, this horse was really easy to engage from the walk to the trot. I just put my legs on, he walked. But what if the saddle fitter said to you, oh yeah, it's fine, it just needs to break in. Okay. So you walk, you put your leg on, and that horse is not going to go forward. Just use more spur, hit him harder. Okay, I normally don't hit my horse. Just do it until the saddle breaks in. No, the horse already tells you something is blocking. You don't need to hit the horse to go from a walk to the trot. You subconsciously feel your gut instinct is already telling you this. But I'm not an Olympic rider. I have no gut instincts. Of course you have gut instincts. Every rider has gut instincts. So what if you're a fitter? Look at the facial expression. There's another thing I mentioned earlier already. You look at the footfall in the scent. Does the hind leg steps over the front leg? Super, super important. See, I can speak from experience. I've been there, have the t-shirt. I was also lucky enough that I was sponsored as a rider, and I had a company who gave me saddle. So of course I felt pretty proud, and I had to tell, of course, my students to get that saddle. If it fitted or not, that was not my job. My job was to make sure they buy that saddle. So just like in any other sports or fashion, there's a sponsor. There's nothing wrong with this. But if we're dealing with fitting or the health of the animal, then there is certain steps you need to consider, such as fitting the saddle to a moving horse. How do I know the horse is in pain? Look at the pain scale. How do I know the movement is restricted? Look at the footfall. Look at the tail. So you as a fitter can see that. You as a rider can feel it. That's even better than visual thing, So there is tools such as a heart monitor. Who would have thought that a horse can be measured? You can measure the horse's stress level like you can measure a human stress level. If the heart is raised artificial very fast, the horse is not even moving. We know if a heart rate is artificially raised, there's cortisol level in the horse's blood. And based on that, the amount of cortisol level in the human medicine, same applies to the horse. We know the horse has stress. Now you can say, well, every time I try a saddle, I want to take a blood test of my horse. Well, but you can take a heart monitor. If your fitter doesn't have a heart monitor, you take gait analysis. There is so many tools out there. You can see gait analysis. The industry goes as far as I said, thermography, gait analysis, heart monitor, computerized saddle pad, pressure pad to every square inch. Exactly, we know where what should not fit. We know exactly that certain points on the horse's back create massive damages. I'm so excited because the science advanced so much. We even know if a muscle properly contracts and elongates and if the horse is balanced. So all what I'm telling you as a rider and as a fitter is not go out there and buy these equipments. But what I say is trust the law of nature and science rather than some opinions. Okay? So when we fit the saddle to a horse and the horse starts tripping, don't listen, oh, it has to break in. If the horse doesn't take the canter or doesn't want to jump, all of a sudden jumps hollow, don't buy it. Get somebody to videotape if you don't listen to the person before who wants to sell your saddle or fits your saddle, if you're the rider. But even if you are a fitter, doesn't matter if you're an equine ergonomist or saddle ergonomist, get a baseline. It's important to see the horse, seeing how does he move freely without any tag. And then it's your duty, it's your absolute duty as a rider to bring the horses back up. Okay, so here's another horse, so you can see how they all sit together. The second you sit on top, there's weight on the back. Okay, so if you just sit on there like a sack of potatoes, that extra weight needs to be carried from the horse. Your duty is to bring the horses back up. So if I squish the tummy, this will come up here. You see that? See how that comes up? Whoop. So now he can carry you, hind leg comes underneath, and the weight is off. So as the weight is off the forehead, that's the end of the sentence. I didn't finish. But my point is, a horse would move without equipment freely, and you put equipment on. It's the duty of the equine ergonomist, saddle ergonomist, the saddle fitter, and the rider to make these movements bigger, not the same, and for sure not less. So this is why you really don't need to go into buying expensive testing tools. You just have to look at, is the movement bigger or not? Is the footprint in the sand bigger than it was before? Then you know the rider did a good job and the saddle wasn't interfering. You know the old saying, right? You can always point and say, yeah, it's a saddle. It's a rider. The rider is not a good rider. Have you ever heard this saying? If you point at something, one finger goes towards the rider, three fingers goes towards you. Okay? The last you want to do is pushing the problem away because, oh, the bad rider. Of course they are bad riders. We all know this. That's where the video comes in nicely. Right? Because you think the rider doesn't see how they hopple and popple around on this horse. So when we fit saddles, please try them how you try shoes as a rider. If you're the fitter, get a baseline, either right in the existing saddle before you fit it, and then ride them in a therapy saddle, right? It's a saddle which you may already heard, which Saddlefit for Life offers, or ride again after the fitting has been done. And that applies to your girth, your saddle pad, and your saddle. Absolutely important to look at the sign. If there's any stumbling, crooked tail, and the list goes on and on and on, what he normally doesn't do without the saddle and the rider. So now, what is the answer? How do we fit the saddle properly to the moving horse? Not by following opinion, because you all know everybody has an opinion. Opinion is like belly buttons. We all have belly buttons. Everybody has an opinion. In the end of the day, the horse may or may not like that person's opinion or that person's opinion. Even worse, what happened to me when I was sponsored in all these saddles, everybody who gave me a saddle had a different opinion how the saddle had to fit the horse. And yet I am the rider who had to deal with the consequences. So let's go straight to it, the how. But don't forget, you always need to know the why as well. Okay? The person who knows the how will always follow the person who knows the why. You want to be a leader, you want to be a good rider, you want to be a good partner to your horse, you got to know the why. Right? You want to be a good fitter, equine ergonomist, saddle ergonomist, you need to know the why. So here we go. As a fitter, watch the footfall. When you fit the saddle to the horse, dynamic, the horse's movement is impeccable. You have to see, it's incredible. You have to watch the movement. You have to have a baseline, either with the old saddle, if you adjust the saddle, Or if you just take it how the saddle fits and you're an equine-ergonomist, you want to evaluate it, get the horse on the launch line. Okay, so see a baseline so you can judge that. As a rider, trust your gut instinct. Nobody knows your horse better than you are. Just because this equine ergonomist who may be an Olympic rider, this equine ergonomist may be a veterinarian or an osteopath. You know, many of the equine ergonomists out there, they are coming from a horse professional background and have a good eye for movement in horses. But nobody knows the horse as good as you do. Communicate what you feel to the horse. So fitting to a dynamic horse is have good communication with the rider. You as a rider, please tell your people what to do. Understand the grimace scale. That's how people through universities can see when that ear goes back or when they show that face. Biting in the air while you ride is not normal. Read the signs of the horse. It's very, very important. Okay, so understand there's so many different shapes. Look at how the rider sits in the saddle, how it impacts the fit to the horse, and then you find a good solution to fit the saddle. So now that we know how to fit the saddle to moving horses back, what are the other little tips I could give you? For example, when is the saddle too long? What is the sign the horse would give you? The horse would stumble, wouldn't pick up the canter, or cross canters. What if the saddle is too wide or too narrow, or the angle of the tree width doesn't fit? Okay, the horse is heavy in the hand, pushes the neck down, hard to take the lead, doesn't even accept the one or the other lead chain. It's bucking. I mean, these are signs what the horse is giving you, which you cannot ignore. So another good example, if the spine of the horse is not protected, how do you protect the spine? By simple don't press on it. It can be on a saddle where the channel is too narrow. It can be if the saddle twists, falls, or rotates, or shifts on the horse's back. I've seen this so many times, and I've been one of them. I said, I'm a good rider, and I can ride in any saddle. I make the horse do what I want to do. Or do you want to rape the horse, or do you want to dance with the horse? Do you want to be one soul, or do you want to be two enemies? So if you don't want to be two enemies, get rid of this pain-causing symptoms. And for the love of God, please do not listen to people say, the saddle needs to break in, or the horse after 20 minutes is warm up. Veterinarians would say after 20 minutes, the nerves are numb, and the horse becomes dull. When the nerve is numb, the muscle dies. So what I want to bring across to you, we at Saddlefit for Life don't just tell you the how. We tell you also the why, because an important sentence what I live by is the person who knows the how will always follow the person who knows the why. If you as a rider understand why do you want to give the lead to the horse certain ways, then you will do it. If you as a fitter, equine ergonomist, saddle ergonomist, if you know this is the sign, when the horse does this sign, this is what caused the saddle, and if I don't get rid of it, there's long-term damage to the horse, right? So sure, I could go and follow the opinion to make my life easier and just to increase sales, just say, it's good enough, go ahead and ride, my opinion. But I do it because I want to help horses, you want to help horses, and you love horses just as I do. So we need to understand, we need to take a stand, we need to stand for something. So one of the sentences I heard was, this person says, do you want to be a cow or a bison? What does that to do with anything? So it says, what does it mean? Well, said, in the wild, watch it. The herd of cows sees the storm and they're running away. They're exhausted. By the time the storm hits up, some of them die, some of them making. The bison, on the other hand, looks at the storm and he turns towards it and he charges against the storm. So less energy, they meet faster. The storm passes faster. And when he's on the other side, from all the water that comes out of the storm, the grass is there, the rivers are full, the storm has given the reward to the bison, so the person who takes on the oncoming problem. So you as an equine agronomist or the rider who takes on the problem and figure out the why and then solve it with what makes sense, not with the opinion, with common sense, what follows the law of nature and science. It's a beautiful part. So if you like what you see here, hit the notification bell, press the subscribe button, like us. It's great. That's awesome for our liking and algorithm. So go for it, guys. And if you really enjoy this, tell your friends. And if you're interested to advance your saddle fitting career, or give a little bit more back to the industry, book a free call with one of our amazing trainers, and let's see how we can together make the horses life better in this world. Thank you very much. See you next time.